Welcome to Western Technical College Business and Industry Services. This video, along with other training opportunities from Western BIS, are designed to help employees stay informed on the latest trends in today's changing workplace. To learn how Western can support your business, visit us at westerntc.edu/BIS.
I'll just start with a quick introduction. I'm Angie Martin. I'm the Director of Business and Industry Services for Western Technical College. And today I have John Zimprich, who is a training consultant with Business and Industry Services here at Western, joining me. And today we're going to be talking about making the most of your employee training budget. Now, throughout this presentation, I think those of you that have joined us for many of these webinars have heard me introduce Business and Industry Services. And I always joke that I feel like sometimes we're the best kept secret at the college. So we are a department within Western that really our role doesn't work necessarily as much with the traditional students that you would envision seeing on campus. Our role is to really go out in the region that Western serves and work with employers. So in doing so, we learn a lot about the workforce needs within the region. And then what we can do is kind of work with our employer partners to develop training programs and allocate the resources from the college to your companies so that you can implement some training and development opportunities. So throughout this presentation, because obviously it's very near and dear to us, this topic, I am going to showcase throughout, you'll see some slides where I'll talk specifically about business and industry services and how we can supplement some of your training efforts as you plan for your training budget. So let's jump in and get started. On the first slide here, oops, I got a double video. Bear with me. Here. Well, for whatever reason, it's deciding to show twice. I'm not sure if you see
How can I sit
in the middle of your screen or not, but at any rate, what I want to take a look at is kind of why do we train employees? Before we start talking about the dollars and cents to it, why do we do it within a company and an organization? Well, there are many reasons why. We do it to recruit better talent. Companies that have well-documented employee development programs tend to be desirable for the talent that's in the region to reach out to. We do it to onboard new hires. So when someone comes into our organization new, to make sure they get a good start. We do it to improve performance of the employees that are in their current roles. And we also do it to prepare people for their next roles in the company. So looking at the idea of succession planning. So before we go any further, I want to just kind of have everyone take a moment and reflect on a time when you've sat in an employee or some sort of a training session. There's good, there's bad. I saw this video and I thought it's a very, very humorous look at maybe some of the things that we've all thought as we've been in training sessions that our company has sponsored. So we'll start with a little humor and I'm gonna go ahead and play here.
Far away from the, how can I sit as far away from the speaker as possible? Why does their technology never work? Can you check it beforehand? Is it possible? Really? You brought your computer in here, Rick? You're not fooling anybody. We know you're on your eBay business. No one has those problems, Karen. Stop asking personal things. This would never work in the real world. Didn't we go over this last meeting? Did I sign it? I did sign it. Can I leave without them noticing? A 20-minute break. Can we not? Can we just leave 20 minutes early? If I go on LinkedIn right now and start applying for jobs, will they see what I'm doing? We definitely went over this last meeting. Are you really reading the PowerPoint to us? Can we not read? This guy gets paid to read the PowerPoints. How do I get his job? I bet he makes more than me. Why are these people so loud? Rude. I need friends. I need friends that can sign for me and then cover if they find out I left. If I open this can of soda, everyone's going to look at me. What lawsuit is this a reaction to? Can you stop asking questions? Huh? Do you have a question quota or something? I want to get out of here. We got 5 minutes. 5 minutes left. He's going to use up all 5 minutes, isn't he? This could have been an email.
I think one of them that I laughed at the most was, what lawsuit is this a response to? And when you think about that, it's sad, but it's true. Sometimes that is the justification and the reason for training. So the idea behind the conversation we'll have today is to look at it on the front end. So you're developing a budget. It's something that your organization is planning for. So that hopefully you can have these training sessions, they can be engaging, and it can be on the front end of any legal action that may need to be taken and prevent it. So let's take a look at, we kind of use the terms interchangeably. When we talk about employee development, employee training, professional development, those are terms that are used interchangeably. We do it ourselves within our department, and that's perfectly okay to do that. But in the planning process, I think you want to really examine what each of them is. So employee training is operational. Professional development is strategic. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Employee training is operational. Professional development is strategic. So employee training really teaches people how to be the most competent that they can be at their jobs. Professional development, on the other hand, is about acquiring knowledge and skills, abilities that are transferable and sometimes less tangible, okay? These are the skills that will develop a person's value to your company and will allow them to contribute across multiple departments within multiple levels of the organization, right? So how that translates into the dollars and cents for your employee development budget really depends on the strategic goals, tactical initiatives that are happening within your organization in the upcoming year. So for example, let's just look at a scenario. Let's pretend that your company is launching into an initiative to become ISO certified, okay? This means you'll have many individuals in your company that need to be trained on what the ISO standard is, how to conduct internal audits, how to write work instructions. Those would be specific training programs to make an ISO program operational within your organization. This would be an example of employee training, okay? So to cite another example, think about if your company's ever launched into new software, okay? So I'll use the example, if your company were to launch into the use of a new CRM like Salesforce, okay? There is a lot of training that will make that platform more operational for you. So your staff might be attending trainings on, basics of Salesforce or how to use data and create reports. Those again are examples of training programs for your employees. Okay. So now on the contrary, let's take a look at professional development. So I'll go back and I'll use the example of the ISO implementation for your company, right? So imagine that your company has already been certified in ISO, you're meeting the minimum standards of certification and everything's going as planned, great, all right? Throughout this process, you've really seen a steady decline in the scrap rate or defects since the ISO implementation happened, and you're wondering how you could really dig in and expand that across the organization, all right? So you have an employee named Mary, we'll say for example, that has proven to be one of your best internal auditors. She's embraced the concept, she's really a change maker within your organization. So someday you're thinking ahead and you're planning that Mary could really be the person that is leading this program for your company in your future. That's where you want to start looking for professional development opportunities for Mary. So maybe it's certification, formal education, something where you're going to enhance her existing skill set to make her better. That's a strategic move on the part of your organization and would be professional development. Okay. So we've discussed how to examine the difference between the two things. So now let's take a look at a couple simple methods that can be used to determine what you should actually be spending on training, right? So if your company's prepared training budgets in the past, it's likely that you have a template to work from. that, and if it's something that's working for your company, you should use that. But you'll want to be sure to compare year to date, what your actual expenditures have been versus the existing budget, and increase accordingly. And then you'll also want to make sure that would assume that you're happy with the program that's in place and the dollars that you have, right? So Training Magazine offers a suggestion on a couple of methods to quickly estimate what your training budget should be. The first method is the total salary estimate. Okay, in this method, you would first look at the total salary costs for your company, and then you can estimate that your employee development budget should equal between 1 to 5% of the total salary costs you should be spending on employee development. So every method has its pros and cons. If you look at the pros of this, you're really making certain that you don't overspend. So in proportion to the payroll that your company is spending, it keeps you in check if you utilize this method. This method also allows you to allocate funds to groups that need more training than others. A challenge of this method would be 1 to 5% is a pretty big range. So if you're an organization that has salary costs that are in the millions of dollars, a swing between 1 and 5% can be a lot. So that can make it sometimes hard to estimate. And additionally, if you're going into a year and you experience heavy turnover or rapid expansion, on the contrary, it can be really difficult to forecast into the future what your salary is going to be, because it will fluctuate, it will change. The second method that Training Magazine suggests is that you determine your training budget based on the number of employees in your organization. So Training Magazine publishes an annual training industry report, and that looks at the average dollar spent in America on employee development each year. Last year, for fiscal year 19, it was $1,286 per employee. Okay. This method suggests that you utilize that dollar average and multiply it by the number of employees that you have. So in this method, it assumes that part of your goal is that every employee should have an opportunity for training and development, and it makes an allocation for that. Plus, it can be much easier to estimate what your desired headcount is going to be at your company versus what your salary expenditures could be. On the contrary, it also assumes that every employee is allocated development dollars that you want to invest in all of your employees. And realistically, sometimes that's not always the case. So that would be a con to this method. On the next slide, what I want to do is just let's put some dollars to it, just to give an example. So if you looked at the number of employees example, ABC Painting Company has 50 employees. The industry average training allocation is $1,286. So you multiply that by the 50 employees, that's in that scenario, your organization, ABC Painting Company, should have an annual training budget of $64,300. Okay. Let's look at the total salary estimate. So again, ABC Painting Company has 50 employees. We're going to estimate that an average annual salary across the company would be $30,000. $30,000 times 50 employees is an annual salary spend of $1.5 million. If we use 3% from the 1 to 5% range, that suggests that our annual training budget should be $45,000. Okay. If you jump up to 4%, that puts you at roughly $60,000, a little bit closer in line with the number of employees example. Okay. So I'd ask you to think about that. Think about your organization's training budget and how does it compare? How does it measure up? Okay. So now we know what the budget for training is supposed to be. We have all this money to work with. where exactly are we going to spend it? Okay. So this graphic shows a breakdown of what businesses in America spend those dollars on each year. Okay, so what we're going to do in the slides ahead is examine each of the categories. So training staff is 50% of your budget. And I want to clarify that when we say training staff accounts for 50% of the budget, we are not saying that this money is actually the money used to get people trained, to get the training done. This is the part of the budget that is spent on the people that will do the work, okay? This is the person or the team within your company that will be in charge of developing the training materials, delivering the courses, and reporting the results to leadership, okay? So depending on the size of your organization, you may employ a training person, you may employ a development team, or you may decide to outsource your training needs. For many organizations in our region, from our experience in working with companies, it tends to be a combination of both. So I will point out that this is, again, one of the areas that's very near and dear to our hearts in business and industry services. Because of the multiple resources that we have available to us through the college, we have the ability to be a resource for companies on a large variety of topics, right? So we have the clients that work with us, I think, really appreciate being a single source for many different topics, okay? Next, let's take a look at training tools and technologies. Training tools and technologies is all about how you're delivering the training to your workers, right? If you're in a classroom setting, you'll need to rent a facility, which is going to have a cost associated with it. Or if you have space, you'll need to transform that into a training space. And when you're planning for the space, there's going to need to be desks or tables and chairs, whiteboards, smart screens, digital technology, maybe a projector. There are a lot of technological considerations for what an instructor is going to need. And much of that will be dependent, on the type of training being conducted. The other thing I would say in thinking about that is if you're doing any sort of technical training, do you need to build training boards or bring in portable trainers? There's quite a bit of expense can go into that area as well as for technical skills in particular. Many organizations also choose to provide employees development through virtual or online methods. And in fact, this year with COVID, most organizations were left with no other choice, that if they were going to do any training at all, it had to be virtual because they couldn't bring groups of people together. So we're hopeful that that changes, obviously, when this is all over, but I think it has also changed how people will learn and will be more interested in doing virtual trainings. But there are expenses that come with that, developing a learning management system or an LMS to support the learning. If your organization is managing the programs internally, you'll want to be sure to allocate dollars for tech support or system maintenance. This year in particular, we launched into an initiative to provide technical skills training online. So that, it's a program that trains on things like electrical, robotics, things like that, and utilizes simulations and assessments to do that work. And we utilize an internal learning management system to get that work done. So there again is an opportunity to outsource, right? The last chunks of the budget we'll look at miscellaneous, 5%. Those are really, travel costs, per diem, reimbursements, consulting fees, those miscellaneous things that will come up. But training content, 20% of your budget, this is where you're really creating the topics and the outcomes and the assessments that you need to do the training each year, okay? This is where the budgeting process needs to really meet up with the strategic initiatives that your company has in mind. What goals and objectives is the company trying to meet in the next year? And then you can align your training content or development content with that, okay? When budgeting for development, you need to carefully assess all of the topics you want to address for the coming year. Then you'll need to decide if it's better to create the topics in-house, which is costly, but more personal. Oops, excuse me, went back here, got ahead of myself. So you want to take a look at whether you want to do it in-house or to outsource it. Or I'm sorry, let me back up. To use ready-made content from an external resource. That is generally much cheaper, but it also can be a little generic. A third option would be to work with an organization like Western Business and Industry Services that provides customized training options for your company. This is something that we excel at. We've worked with many organizations throughout our region. And over the years, in doing so, we've really been able to build a very extensive library of curriculum that we have to work with. We have hundreds of subject matter experts that help. And I mean, topics from welding to quality assurance to healthcare certifications, we've done a lot over the years. And that can really help support your training needs. We'll do it by utilizing the curriculum library that we have, and then bringing in a subject matter expert to take that content and customize it to your organization's needs. It can be a very, very affordable option for many companies, and a lot of organizations find it to be really a flexible, good fit. Okay, lastly here, we'll look at how to maximize your employee development dollars. So despite your best efforts, the reality is that when the economy has a downturn, training and development is unfortunately some of the first things that get cut, okay? And as we look ahead to 2021 and the effects of COVID, I think that's going to be a real reality for a lot of organizations. So what are some things that you can do to save every dime possible when it comes to planning for training? So we think one of the most beneficial things that you could do is to really look inward at your own employees. Within the industry, we've termed this content, this called user-generated content. It's when you're utilizing your own employees to share the knowledge that they have with others in your organization. So if you think of an example, if you have leads and supervisors on a production line, and one of your initiatives is to how to cut costs. A lot of times in that environment, those individuals maybe have no background in finance or understanding. So do you have someone that works in your finance team that could put together a lunch and learn and demonstrate and show them how material costs make up the cost of the product, and show them that just with some minor savings, easy measures, how much it can really impact the bottom line, okay? Another option would be to kickstart a mentoring program within your company. Mentoring programs can be very, very empowering to your employees. They offer structure and professional development, but it really puts the employees front and center and owning the development for themselves and for their team. They're not very costly because the people are always there, and the individuals that are taking part in that really learn and develop a lot of communication and leadership skills. So opportunities like these two, for example, they can save your organization a lot of money, but they also build engagement because you're really putting the employees in these scenarios front and center, right? Lastly, before we wrap up, we're going to take a look at utilizing and leveraging grant dollars for employee training and development. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to John so he can talk a little bit about the opportunities that exist here at Western.
Thank you. Thank you, Angie. I would share that, the state of Wisconsin has, through the Workforce Development Board and the Western Technical College system, makes hundreds of thousands of dollars available each year to support employee training efforts. And they do that through a multitude of grants. So if your organization is looking at doing some large projects or training programs or developing into certain markets that were to require some expanded training, the state helps fund anywhere from 50 to 75%, which is a great cost savings to help, especially with those large programs. that you might have. So we'll kind of talk through the first one, which would be Fast Forward grants, Wisconsin Fast Forward grants. These grants are managed as well as written by the employer or the company that will be handling them. Business and industry can support with budget dollars as far as training budget dollars to help you allocate for them and better understand. And also, we can also be a training resource for those grants. The second one is the Workforce Advancement Training Grant. We at Western, there are 16 technical colleges throughout the region, or throughout the state, excuse me, and a certain amount of money is allocated to them. And I'm pretty sure, and Angie can correct me, but I think it's $4 million is allocated throughout to those colleges. It's a very competitive grant process, but business and industry does do all of the writing as well as managing the grant. So there's not a lot of work on the employer end other than commitment and obviously a plan to work through it. I would say if you have questions about either one, don't hesitate to reach out. I would share the Workforce Advancement Grant. The WAT grant is something that we do. I think we started looking at them in January, February, and March. We write them in April, but we talk about them year round. So if you have a project that comes up that you think that might be good for a grant, a large project, we're always open to having those conversations. And feel free to reach out to me. My number's in the bottom, as well as you can shoot me an email and we can set a meeting to just talk through it, how we might better help you. That's all I have on grants. I think Angie wants to tie back to a company that we work closely with, a partner of ours, to share a little video about their experience with WAT grants.
Yeah, thank you, John. So I'll go ahead here, and this is, we'll close out by taking a listen to an organization that has a lot of experience working with the grant programs that John mentioned.
DuraTech is a custom manufacturer of high quality labels, overlays, membrane switches, and we're just getting into user interface panels as well. If you're a company that's willing to invest in training, TC along with the WAT grant actually has been an extremely wonderful combination to work on developing training programs that are affordable and great and drive bottom line results. For instance, Kaizen event for setup reduction on our screen printing presses. 30 minutes was what it would take to change a press over, and with the Lean Kaizen event, the hard work of the instruction of TC along with the hard work of the team members, we've gotten setups this week down to 6 minutes on some cases. So some great performance results with the training.
They're so hands-on, they've got the things we need. They've got the skill levels that we need. They've got a lot of information, and the people that work there really work closely with us, and they're very in touch with our industry and what we do, and they'll answer questions. So it's almost like calling somebody else from DuraTech. It's just so diversified, everything from leadership skills and development all the way to lean manufacturing on the floor, lean leadership, Kaizen programs, just a host of different things. We've seen, increases in productivity. We've seen the workstations improvement. We've reduced the amount of steps, the amount of confusion that people have about their job.
The tools that they've learned from TC and the classes to help drive process improvement. The gross profit for the company is one of the highest that we've seen in many years. I think the three things that stick out most are the type of classes, they're relevant. You can train and then implement that training right away. The instructors are fabulous, lots of energy. And then the last thing, if DuraTech was to do internal training, it's very hard to keep up with the latest and greatest with all the classroom materials and everything, and TC does a wonderful job.
Okay, so with that for today, we will wrap up. There is information on the screen. We certainly thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you for viewing this video from Western Technical College Business and Industry Services. Learn more about the hundreds of training and development opportunities available for your employees at westerntc.edu/BIS.